Officer Jake Miller's cold voice sliced through the chatter of the park like a knife. "Pack it up. Now. You don't belong here." Delilah Carter, a black woman in her 60s, paused, her hands steadying a tray of sandwiches she had just placed on the table. She looked up at Jake, calm but resolute. "I'm here to help. Feeding my community is not a crime." Jake stepped closer, his towering figure casting a shadow over her small setup. "This isn't your property. It's public land, and you don't have a permit. You're trespassing." Delilah straightened, meeting his glare with quiet dignity. "I've been doing this for years. No one's ever had an issue before." "Well, I've got an issue now," Jake snapped, his tone laced with disdain. Without waiting for a reply, he shoved the table with both hands, sending trays of food, bottled water, and napkins crashing to the ground. Gasps rippled through the small crowd gathered nearby. The quiet buzz of the park was replaced with murmurs of disbelief as people watched the scene unfold. Delilah's hands clenched at her sides, but she refused to break. "This isn't right," she said, stepping forward to pick up the scattered food. "These are for the kids." Jake grabbed her wrist mid-motion, yanking her upright with a force that made her wince. "You're resisting now? Maybe a little lesson will remind you to follow orders." The crowd stood frozen, torn between fear and anger, as Jake dragged Delilah toward a nearby garbage bin. He pulled zip ties from his belt, binding her wrists tightly to the handle of the bin. Delilah's voice, steady and unwavering, broke the tense silence. "You think this makes you powerful? You'll regret this, officer. You'll regret it." Jake sneered, leaning in close. "Regret? Lady, people like you don't get heroes." The roar of an engine broke through the murmurs of the stunned crowd. A sleek black SUV sped into the park, its tires screeching to a halt near the chaos. The door opened, and out stepped Marcus Carter, his sharp Royal Guard uniform gleaming in the sunlight. His presence was magnetic, commanding immediate attention. The crowd, moments ago paralyzed with shock, parted instinctively as Marcus strode toward the scene with purpose. His tall, imposing figure carried a calm authority, each step deliberate and firm. Jake Miller froze, his grip tightening on his belt as he processed the unexpected arrival. His earlier smugness faded, replaced with a flicker of uncertainty. Marcus's piercing gaze scanned the scene, the overturned table, the scattered food, and finally, his mother, bound to the garbage bin with her dignity intact despite the humiliation. His jaw tightened, his fists clenching at his sides. When his eyes locked with Jake's, the air seemed to shift. "Untie her. Now." Marcus's voice was calm but carried a weight that made everyone pause. Jake's lips curled into a sneer, trying to mask his faltering confidence. "This is none of your business. She's trespassing. Breaking the law." Marcus didn't flinch. He took another step forward, his eyes never leaving Jake's. "Untie her," he repeated, his tone icier than before. "Or I will." The crowd held its breath, sensing the tension thickening between the two men. Jake hesitated, his arrogance faltering under Marcus's unyielding glare. For the first time, he seemed to understand the magnitude of the situation, and the authority Marcus wielded. With a shaky hand, Jake fumbled for the zip ties but froze halfway, unable to meet Marcus's gaze. "I don't answer to you," he muttered. Without a word, Marcus stepped past him, his movements precise and controlled. He pulled a pocket knife from his belt and quickly cut the ties binding Delilah's wrists. Delilah looked up at her son, her eyes shining with a mix of relief and pride. "You didn't have to come," she whispered. Marcus's voice softened as he helped her stand. "You're my mother. I'll always come." Turning back to Jake, Marcus's expression hardened again. "Your badge doesn't give you the right to treat people like this. You've overstepped, and there will be consequences." Jake opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat as Marcus addressed the crowd. "This park belongs to this community, not to men like him who think they can abuse their power. If you ever feel unsafe, you come to me. I promise you, this isn't over." The crowd erupted in applause, their earlier fear replaced with a sense of empowerment. Marcus's commanding presence had shifted the atmosphere entirely, leaving Jake visibly shaken. As Marcus helped Delilah gather what was left of her supplies, he cast one final look at Jake. His message was clear: this was only the beginning. Next morning, Marcus Carter was seated at his desk, his Royal Guard uniform neatly pressed, his face calm but determined. In front of him lay the official complaint form, already filled out in precise detail. He double-checked every word, ensuring there were no gaps or ambiguities. This wasn't just a matter of filing a complaint, it was the first step toward justice. Marcus submitted the complaint personally to the local police department's Internal Affairs Division. His authoritative demeanor and unwavering tone made it clear that he wasn't going to let this incident be swept under the rug. He recounted the events in vivid detail, from Jake Miller's unnecessary aggression to the humiliation his mother endured in front of the community. "This isn't just about my mother," Marcus said firmly to the officer taking his statement. "It's about the abuse of power and the harm it causes to the people you are sworn to protect." Word of the incident spread quickly. Within hours, social media was ablaze with posts and videos captured by bystanders, showing the cops' shocking behavior. Hashtags like #JusticeForDelilah and #PowerAbuse began trending, drawing national attention to the small neighborhood park. News outlets picked up the story, broadcasting the footage to millions and sparking outrage across the country. As the investigation into Jake's actions unfolded, a troubling pattern emerged. Internal Affairs unearthed years of complaints filed against him, reports of harassment, excessive use of force, and racially biased behavior. For years, these complaints had been dismissed or buried, ignored by his superiors who prioritized protecting their own over holding their officers accountable. Marcus, with his platform and influence, didn't stop at filing the complaint. He held a press conference, standing alongside his mother and key community leaders. "This isn't just about one officer," he told the gathered reporters. "This is about a system that allows bad actors to thrive unchecked. My mother is just one of many who have suffered under this abuse. That stops now." The press conference struck a chord, galvanizing public support. Delilah's calm dignity and Marcus's passionate advocacy became symbols of resilience and accountability. Donations poured in to support legal action, and community groups rallied around the Carter family. Faced with mounting evidence and public pressure, the police department had no choice but to act. Jake Miller was suspended without pay pending the outcome of the investigation, and the department promised sweeping internal reforms. Marcus, however, wasn't satisfied with promises alone. He worked tirelessly to ensure systemic changes were implemented, from mandatory anti-bias training to stronger oversight mechanisms. In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Delilah's story became a national movement. Communities across the country began sharing their own stories of injustice, inspired by the Carters' courage. Through it all, Marcus remained focused, knowing that this fight wasn't just for his mother but for everyone who had ever been silenced or wronged. Justice wasn't just unfolding, it was transforming the very foundation of the system. And Marcus was determined to see it through to the end. The fallout from the park incident rippled far and wide, leaving no stone unturned. Officer Jake Miller, once confident in his authority, found himself at the center of a firestorm he could not control. The video of his actions had gone viral, shared across social media platforms and broadcasted on major news outlets. His smug expression as he tied Delilah Carter to a garbage bin, coupled with her quiet but unyielding dignity, struck a chord with people from all walks of life. The public outcry was immediate and overwhelming. Community leaders, activists, and citizens demanded accountability. Jake was swiftly suspended from the police force, pending a thorough investigation. As the internal review began, evidence of his past misconduct came to light, complaints that had been dismissed, warnings that had gone unheeded, and a pattern of abusive behavior that painted a damning picture. It was clear that the incident with Delilah was not an isolated event but the culmination of years of unchecked authority. The investigation concluded with the inevitable: Officer Jake Miller was stripped of his badge and dishonorably discharged from the force. He retreated from public life, his name synonymous with the abuse of power. Jake's downfall served as a stark reminder of what happens when authority is misused, and it marked a turning point for the community. While Jake faced the consequences of his actions, Delilah emerged as a symbol of resilience and strength. Her story resonated far beyond the boundaries of the neighborhood park. She became a beacon of hope for others who had faced injustice, her quiet courage inspiring countless individuals to stand up for themselves and their communities. Delilah's unwavering commitment to helping others, even in the face of humiliation, turned her into a local hero. The park, once a neglected and forgotten corner of the community, underwent a transformation. Donations and volunteer efforts poured in to restore and revitalize the space. The once cracked basketball court was resurfaced, the playground received new equipment, and murals depicting unity and strength adorned the walls. At the heart of the park stood Delilah's food table, now a permanent fixture. Neighbors and volunteers joined her every week, turning what was once a solitary act of kindness into a collective effort to uplift the community. New policies were implemented to ensure that no one would ever face the kind of humiliation Delilah endured. The police department introduced mandatory training programs on community engagement, bias awareness, and conflict resolution. Officers were held to higher standards of accountability, with a transparent system for addressing complaints and misconduct. The park became more than just a place for families to gather, it became a symbol of what could be achieved when people stood together. It was a hub of hope, where barriers were broken and connections were strengthened. Delilah's food table continued to serve as a reminder that small acts of kindness could spark monumental change. For Marcus Carter, the fallout was personal. Watching his mother endure such humiliation had ignited a fire within him, but seeing her rise above it with grace and determination filled him with pride. He knew the fight for justice didn't end with Jake Miller's dismissal, it was an ongoing journey to create a better, fairer world. Marcus used his influence and resources to ensure that the lessons from the incident were not forgotten. As Delilah handed out sandwiches to a growing line of neighbors one sunny afternoon, she looked around at the bustling park. The laughter of children, the hum of conversations, and the sight of people coming together warmed her heart. She had not set out to change the world, but her strength had sparked a movement. "Mom, look at what you've done," Marcus said, standing beside her. "This is your legacy." Delilah smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "It's not mine alone. It's ours, this community's. Together, we've shown that no matter how dark things get, hope and kindness can light the way." And so, the park, Delilah, and her story became a lasting testament to the power of resilience, unity, and the courage to stand against injustice. As the dust settled over the events that had shaken the community, Marcus Carter found himself sitting with his mother, Delilah, on the porch of her modest home. The evening breeze carried with it a sense of calm, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had engulfed their lives just days earlier. Delilah sat quietly, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Marcus, still in his Royal Guard uniform, sat beside her, his tall frame exuding the calm authority that had silenced even the most defiant voices. "You know," Marcus began, his voice soft but steady, "you're stronger than you realize, Mom. What you did, standing up to that officer, holding your dignity even when he tried to strip it away, that's what inspired me to fight as hard as I did." Delilah smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I wasn't trying to inspire anyone, Marcus. I just wanted to help people, like I always have. I didn't think it would lead to all this." "All this," Marcus repeated, gesturing toward the world outside her home, is what happens when someone stands tall against injustice. You didn't just help a few people with sandwiches, Mom. You reminded an entire community that they deserve better. That they're worth fighting for. The story of Delilah's courage had spread far beyond the neighborhood park. News outlets across the country had picked up the story, and Delilah's calm defiance in the face of humiliation had become a rallying cry for change. Her picture, standing tall even as her wrists were tied to a garbage bin, had circulated widely, accompanied by hashtags like #JusticeForDelilah and #StrengthInDignity. Donations and messages of support poured in, not just from locals but from people all over the country. The community park, once a place of neglect, had become a hub of activity and hope. Volunteers came together to restore it, installing new benches, repainting the playground, and setting up a permanent space for Delilah's food table. The laughter of children playing and the hum of conversations replaced the heavy silence that had once hung over the park. "I never thought I'd see the day when people cared so much about what happens here," Delilah said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's overwhelming, Marcus. But it gives me hope." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Hope is what this community needed. And you gave them that, Mom. You reminded everyone that change starts with one person refusing to back down." The changes extended beyond the park. Officer Jake Miller had been stripped of his badge and faced public disgrace. The police department, under pressure from the community and national attention, implemented new policies to ensure accountability and prevent such incidents from happening again. Training sessions on bias and community relations became mandatory, signaling a shift in priorities. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, Marcus and Delilah sat in reflective silence. Finally, Delilah spoke, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You know, Marcus, I always told you to use your strength to protect others. Watching you fight for me, for this community, it's the proudest I've ever been." Marcus smiled, his gaze softening. "You gave me that strength, Mom. You taught me that real power isn't about authority, it's about doing what's right, no matter the cost." The next morning, Delilah returned to the park with her food table, this time surrounded by neighbors and volunteers who had come to help. As she handed out sandwiches, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that her small act of kindness had sparked something much bigger. Marcus stood at a distance, watching her with pride, knowing that their fight had left a lasting impact. The story ends with a simple truth: standing up for what's right, no matter how small the act may seem, can create ripples that inspire others and bring about lasting change. Marcus and Delilah's journey serves as a reminder that hope and resilience are the foundation of a better future. To our viewers, what did you think of Delilah's incredible strength and Marcus's fight for justice? Have you ever been inspired to take a stand against injustice in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments, we'd love to hear your stories. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of resilience and hope. Together, we can amplify voices that deserve to be heard. See you next time.